Hello once again. Welcome to Money in Motion with financial advisor Walt West. He is the founder of West Advisory Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. And Walt, every single week you like to help us with retirement planning solutions and strategy. Different than just the broadcasters out there telling you about the news.
No.
You actually help people with solutions. How
Absolutely. You know, have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas and help many people over the years, and preparing for that phase, that distribution phase, and it's just been an awesome journey. So gratifying to be able to plan for somebody and see them say, wow, I really can do this. I can actually move into retirement with confidence, right? So there's no better feeling.
That's got to be the best meeting. Best meeting.
Absolutely.
Right? Say, let me show you the projections. If you take your money out to this age, it's going to last this long. You go, and I'm this close. Yep. I'm this close, or I can do it already.
Yeah, because most people come into the office, they have a hope, dream, and a prayer. They don't have anything documented. They have no written plan. They don't have anything there that they can sink their teeth in to say, is this really going to work or not, right? And we talk in these shows often about all the various pieces that need to be put into place to make all this work. Oftentimes people silo these things. I want to get the best return on my investment, right? They think that's going to solve all their problems. No, that's just the start of your problems, quite frankly, right? There's so many other things to there, and that's why we love doing these shows, to bring this information to people to help educate them so they can make better decisions.
Right, and again, you're not just broadcasting on news and events or what is happening in the markets going up or down. You can actually evaluate it and give us some real feedback. Yeah. Let me ask you some real feedback on these 401ks. The stuff that people have been using for the last 2, 3, 4 decades.
Yes.
First of all, we don't really have pensions anymore. There's very small sectors. I mean, our government sectors, large employees. Yep. In fact, they're the largest employer with pension plans still. Our police, safety, fire workers, sometimes teachers and so forth. But really, the pensions aren't out there. So for 3 decades, retirement's been put on the American public.
Absolutely.
How are we doing? You see them as financial advisors every single day. What do these 401ks look like to you?
Well, I really believe that, starting early is a key element to the success of a plan, right? So, but what's unfortunate is that a lot of people, only put enough money in to get the match, right? So they get the match if they're entitled to a match, and they kind of stop there in often cases. And what they find is that, their accumulation value of their 401k is not that much, right? It's not as much as they anticipated it to be. That's the big unknown with 401ks. You have no idea what the end looks like, right? Because there's so much that goes into it. You have a lot of decisions you got to make. How much should I put in? How should I invest it? What about the risk?
And those decisions are put on you. They're put on me, Absolutely. Right? And oftentimes, I know there's one that I'm using, right? It's basically got a dial on it. And you say, how much percentage do you want in this fund? And you got to pick the funds. And I think I had a choice of about 20 different funds, but then I had to do a little bit of research, and I called the fund administrator there and asked them, I said, well, we can tell you how the website works. Are you having a problem with your password or anything? But they're not there to give you allocations.
No. They're not. You get some representation in a 401k with your employer. They have someone come in and might talk to you about maybe how you should allocate, how you should consider allocating, but they're not really talking about, are you really putting enough money in, where that's going to take you down the road. You don't really have those deep conversations about really what this is going to look like and how this is going to fit into your overall retirement plan, your financial plan. They never get into that depth conversation, which is very, very necessary. Because really, I like to say, though, your employer-sponsored plan can do more for you than you can do for yourself because of the amount of money you can
I want to make that clear too. I'm not bashing on your plans of work, but there are limitations and there are costs. There's a lot of folks who think they're free.
Yeah, and I don't think the employers have done a good job of disclosing the true cost of having a 401k. Oftentimes, I'll meet with someone, they think they don't pay anything. They think, well, I don't pay any fees in my 401k. Well, you just don't know you're paying fees, right? Because they're not necessarily being disclosed, right? So whether it be an administrative fee or it be a fund fee or whatever, they're in there. I mean, those fees are in there, right? So you need to really understand that. And I urge people to go to their employer to get the plan summary that really takes a deep dive on what that is. You should understand that because if the fees are too high, obviously that impacts your ability to grow your wealth. Right? So you need to make sure that you understand what that looks like, right? So
well, you're a financial advisor here in the area. You see all kinds of plans around here. I don't want you to call out any employers in particular, but what do you think of some of the fund costs Or not just the fund cost, but the actual administrative costs? What do they kind of run?
Well, I mean, they're anywhere from like a 0.5% almost up to 1.75% we typically see. And sometimes depending
That's
on.
terrible.
Yeah, and actually you find that even some of the smaller plans, the bigger plans, they tend to be a little bit more efficient. The smaller plans really have more embedded costs in there, right? So you see that oftentimes. So depending on, where someone works, if it's a large employer versus a small employer, they're going to be impacted by cost differently, depending on what that looks like, right? So, but you have the ability to, you're welcome to ask your employer for that detailed information, because you should know what that is. You really should.
There's another element, maybe we can talk about it after the break. I want to ask you about some of the fund choices. What are some of the elements, the kinds of things that we see inside there? I know there are bond funds, I know there are stock funds, but there's a whole new area in there also called target date funds. Yep. And I often see people using all three of them. How are people using them on their own? But before we do that, please explain to me the complementary, the lab. The lab session, the retirement lab session, it's not for a group of people, it's for individuals.
Yeah, the lab session is really a tremendous opportunity for all our viewers to take advantage. It's a time that we can get together one-on-one and really have a conversation about your plan, right? Or the lack of a plan, if you will. Really take a deep dive, do a diagnostic test to determine whether you have money falling through the cracks, whether it be paying too much in taxes, or you simply don't have the right strategy for your investments, too much risk. You can determine how much risk you have. You can also make sure you're asking all the right questions to get the critical facts for your family. You don't want to be making decisions and find out 6 months from now that decision I made a mistake, right? So if you ask the right questions, you come in, get educated, go through the lab session, ask good questions, and then walk away with 3 key elements. Number one, you're going to have more clarity knowing that your plan for retirement, what you hope to accomplish, is actually going to be able to accomplish it because you have the right plan in place, right? Number two, you're going to get the comfort knowing you're not putting square pegs in the round holes. And lastly, you're going to have the confidence that all the pieces of the financial puzzle are put together to give you that picture-perfect retirement. So definitely got to take advantage of that lab session. Simply just going to call that number on your screen, 888-585-8701, and schedule that lab session. It's just a simple conversation. There's nothing else going to happen there. It's just to have a conversation about really what's important to you.
Walt, we're going to take a very short break. I want to add on to that. If you see the QR code down on the bottom of the screen, you can open up your phone, open it up to the camera function, and point it at that black and white box. If you click on that, it'll take you right over to Walt's website. You can schedule your session right there. 60-minute session dedicated to you, your family, your goals, your planning, your needs, and you'll be able to know how comfortable you can be in retirement, or if you have a little bit more work to do, and how Walt and the team might be able to help you. Call the phone number, use that QR code. More Money in Motion with Walt West when we get back right after this.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Money in Motion with Walt West, financial advisor and the founder of West Advisory Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle, and we're talking about all those different kinds of funds that are inside your retirement accounts, how it's been working out for folks for the last 2 or 3 decades. We do know that people are saving, they're using them. Unfortunately, not to their maximum ability, oftentimes just up to the match.
Right.
Plus, there's catch-up provisions, which means you can put in more over the age
Absolutely.
of 50.
Yep.
There's a lot of different ways to catch up. But my curiosity is, I know that they're often filled with stock funds, bond funds, and we have to do the research in it. There's another one in there, though, target date funds.
Yep.
And I understand how and why they're chosen by the employer. I understand sometimes why they're chosen by the individual. It's supposed to make life easy, but how are those working out for folks, especially if we look back at last year?
Yeah, right. So, we're often asked, from our clients that can we review their employer-sponsored plan, their 401k or their 403b, right? So, oftentimes they have maybe 60 different options available in these plans, right? And you can see it's a daunting task to determine, what's right for me, kind of a thing, right? So, you got, as you alluded to, you got stock funds, you got, the equity funds, you got large cap, mid cap, small cap, and you got all the different types of bond funds, right? And then you have these target date funds. The target date funds is really, kind of putting a wrapper around all that stuff, the kind of predetermined portfolio based on how close you are to your retirement age. Right?
So you pick a fund, I think I've seen them in there. They're numbered then around the year that you want to retire. It'll just say 2030 or 2040 or 2045 or something like that. And then how does it function on the inside?
So what happens is oftentimes what they're doing, they're taking all those fund options in which that you have in your plan, and they're taking that, they're building a portfolio internally based on the time period in which you're going to retire. So let's say that it's a 2030, for example, and that happens, that's 10 years out, right? So they're going to look at that and say, you have a 10-year horizon until retirement. So they're going to base that on like so much equity, maybe 60% equities and 40% fixed income, and then they're going to arrange, large cap, mid cap, small cap, and that's 60%, and then they're going to take the bond side, that 40%, maybe put some corporate bonds in there, put some, government bonds in there. They're going to kind of diversify. So you might actually have about 15 to 20 different funds that you own in that target date fund. And what they do, they shift those percentages over time. So the closer you get to retirement, they shift from a 60-40, equity fixed income, maybe to a 50-50 equity to fixed income, and they keep adding more fixed income as you get closer and closer to retirement. So once you get to near that 10th year, let's say 2030, for example, here we are in 2029, you might now have 70% fixed income and 30% equity. So that's what they're doing internally on your behalf. Where I see mistakes is people own target date funds, but also own individual funds, right?
Yeah.
So what's end up happening, they think they're becoming more diversified, they're being less
they're
diversified.
checking all of the different, you know what I've also seen, WW? I've seen people who've had the 2030, 2032, 2034,
Yes.
because they think that I'm using the different funds. It's like, you're messing up the whole concept of what it's supposed to be.
People think more diversity is more risk management. Quite frankly, it's just the opposite, right? You only really need to have 8 asset classes represented to have the most efficient type of a portfolio. But to your point, if you have multiple target date funds, what you end up having is a tremendous amount of overlapping, and you're not diversified. You think you're diversified, but the reality is you're not, right?
So costs. Tell me what you see on the costs inside these target dates.
Target dates tend to be a little bit more expensive, and the reason because there's more work to be done, right? You have to actually have people in there managing the portfolio for you. Well, they're going to need to be paid, right? So the cost element is actually higher in the target date fund. It appears to be simpler. That's why people usually choose them, because I don't know what to pick. I'm just going to pick a target date. They became very, very popular. But just because they're popular doesn't mean they're good.
Right.
They bring risk to the portfolio. Again, just going back to what we experienced in 2022, right? People nearing retirement, getting close to retirement, they think that they're more conservative in their target date fund because they're right on that verge of that at the top end of that. The idea they had a lot of fixed income in there, right? Unfortunately, fixed income did not do well in 2022, and those
right.
target
And so
date
we were moving from stock funds over to the bond funds, and I had read somewhere where target date funds had the worst year in the last 2 decades last year because we were moving over to that quote-unquote safety.
And people were really surprised by that, right? Because they've been taught incorrectly that bonds equal safety. Well, it depends on the economic environment to determine whether that be true, right? You can't silo this, right? The problem with target date funds, they're not nimble. They don't look at economic conditions. That's not how they're built. They're built based on how long is it before you retire. That's the only criteria that goes into managing that. That's not the way you manage a portfolio. You got to take all these other things into consideration: economic conditions, market conditions, interest rates, inflation. All these things have an impact on how you should be allocating those dollars. You're best served to go out and hand pick those equity positions: large cap, mid cap, small cap, international.
I understand what you're saying, but there's a lot of folks who say, I don't know what I'm doing
Yep.
picking those. And it might be 10 funds or 20, or now I'm seeing 401k with 30 or 40 fund choices. And we become frozen in indecision because I don't know what I'm, all right, I'll just do 10% and 10% and 10%.
I agree. That's why we provide a complimentary lab session for people, especially the people viewing this program right today. Here's an opportunity to get a diagnostic test on your financial situation to learn about how those allocations should look and how you best allocate your money. We do this all the time for people, help them. And what that allocation looks like is consistent with what the retirement plan looks like, right? Where they are in life and what the purpose of that money is going to be. So you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't understand the risk. You should understand what that risk looks like before you venture into just making a bunch of decisions, right? You have to have the education to do that. We provide that education. The lab session helps you provide that education. It's simply a simple conversation. They come into the office for 60 minutes to take a deep dive into that conversation.
Well, I was looking on your website and it said something about the 3 A's. The 3 A's of someone who you can probably best suitably help. What exactly are those?
Well, that's a great question. The 3 A's is very, very important. The first A stands for assets, right? So we like to work with people that are 1 to 5 years away from retirement, have accumulated assets, and feel like they're in a good position to make that transition from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase. The second A stands for attitude. They have a good attitude, right? They're nice people. They're really interested about the retirement. They want to become more educated about what's going on. They want to be independent, integrity. All those things are a great attitude, right? The third A challenge is really advocacy. They're interested in buying into a process that makes up the retirement plan, not buying a product, right? So the process is a critical element to the success of any plan, right? And we have a key process in our firm called the Peak Formula, which takes you through all these pieces, leaves no stone unturned. It puts all the pieces of the financial puzzle together. So if you happen to meet that 3A challenge, you really got to pick up that phone and give us a call.
You know what, and I want to talk about that financial plan itself, what exactly it looks like. We'll do a bit of a scenario just sitting here at the desk together and go through it. Folks, if you are interested in taking control of your own retirement, it can be as simple as picking up the phone or even picking up your phone and using that QR code down on the bottom of the screen. Open up your camera, point it at the QR code down on the bottom and click on it. It'll take you over to the website. Or just as simple as this. Call the phone number right here. We'll get you started on your own complimentary retirement lab session, looking at your income, your taxes, estate planning, healthcare choices, all of it wrapped up together to put together a plan that is specific for you and your family. 888-585-8701 is the phone number. You can see it right there on the screen. More Money in Motion, Retirement Money in Motion with Walt West, right after this.
When was the last time you saw your financial professional? Are you getting the most out of the strategy that was created for you? Although you've done a great job finding someone to help plan for your future, are you 100% sure that you were given the right strategy? We can help answer these questions and more with a complimentary second opinion evaluation. We will take a look at what you have in place and then help determine if you're well positioned to get the most out of your future retirement income. In the event that it is not, we can help by making suggestions and showing you how to get on the right path. You wouldn't get just one opinion when it comes to a major health decision, so why would you treat your most important financial decision with such disregard? Call today for your no-cost, no-obligation second opinion evaluation to see if you're getting the most out of your retirement income plan.
Welcome back to Money in Motion with Walt West. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Walt is a financial advisor and the founder of West Advisory Group, and our programs are dedicated to untangling the knots of retirement. It can be confusing, really, really overwhelming for folks. And even people who come into your office, I like what you were saying about the advocacy, that we've got the right attitude. Because let's be honest here. You're choosing the relationship as well.
Absolutely.
It's not just, as you say, a product. This isn't a 30-second transaction where you say, here's your pill or here's your product that's going to help you retire. This is an ongoing relationship that you're going to be talking and helping with these people 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, maybe even longer
Absolutely.
than that. The legacy of the rest of your team that's going to continue to help people. So you're choosing. I like when you said the attitude, because you want to work with people who you get along with, who can envision the same thing you're looking at.
Absolutely, because when we work with somebody and we determine, because we call a fit process, a process to get to know each other, to see if we're going to be good for each other, right? The idea is it's a philosophy. We have a philosophy, you have a philosophy. We got to make sure we mesh. That's the critical element. We can't be doing any work. We can't be getting into too much detail on anything until we know where we are, right? As far as, because this is going to be a long-term relationship. We're not only going to help you build this plan, but we're going to help you, we're going to take responsibility for what this plan looks like for the rest of your life. So this is a long-term relationship. So there's a lot that goes into that, to your point. That's right. So having a good attitude is critical, right? If we can't work together, if you're not really open to ideas.
Communication's a two-way street, and we've got to make sure our deals align up together.
Absolutely. That is a critical element before you start anything, right? You know, you can take a deep dive to make sure we analyze. You can pick out the areas where money is potentially falling through the cracks, but that's an important part of it. But okay, that's all well and good, but are we the right people to fix it for you, right? Are we aligned in our values and in our philosophy? We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that before we start moving down that road. So those are all important things, and you know, I welcome anybody that's watching this to come in to see if our values align. For sure.
Let's talk about that actual financial plan. It's a written financial plan. It's not an if strategy. You actually crash test it. Clearly, it involves the investments and income strategy. But can you round out some of the other pieces?
Absolutely. I mean, we take a very holistic approach to your retirement. That is a critical element. We silo nothing, right? Siloing is a recipe for disaster, in our opinion, right? So whether it be tax planning, whether it be risk management, whether it be wealth management, whether it be estate planning, all these things are critical elements to the overall plan. But you know, just talking about a tax plan, I'll just an example of a client that came in. We did a class on tax planning, and they came into the office and they listened to what we said in tax planning, and they were ready to go and make this big change with their investment portfolio from a tax-deferred bucket to a tax-free bucket, and that's all they wanted to talk about, right? They were just focused in on that, and we just pushed back on the whole thing. We just said, no. I said, yes, we think that probably makes sense to you, but I'm going to tell you, any decision you make when it comes to tax planning will affect other areas in your life. Look at healthcare, right? Healthcare, for example. If you do that, you're impacted by your Medicare premium, right? So, and once I start to go through that process with this couple, they opened up. They said, well, that makes total sense, right? We just wanted to come in here and talk about what would be the best way to move our money from a tax-deferred bucket to a tax-free bucket. I said, more than happy to have that conversation, but I'm not making any recommendation today on that, because I'm telling you, you're going to be impacted here, and there's going to be money falling through the cracks. So that holistic approach, I think, is critical.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is also when you're talking about risk management. I hear the word risk. We're talking on a financial show. You are a financial advisor yourself. But when you're talking about risk management, you're not just talking about investment risk. You're actually talking about a whole different area of risks.
Yep. Risk management really comes down to the what ifs in life, right? What if you get sick? What if your spouse passes away? All kind of different things can happen to you. How will you be impacted by those types of what you call critical financial events? Well, these are events that happen. Some of these events that happen to you are somewhat predictable, and there's others that are much more random, right? So these random events that could potentially happen to you, you want to know that how your plan is going to react to that, right? How will you, instead of doing, crisis planning, you want to be proactive, not reactive, right? So if you can build a plan that addresses all the risks that can potentially happen to you, and hopefully you have none of them, but if you have a plan that addresses them and you put the right pieces in place to solve that, then you're just gives you much more peace of mind, right? And you want that peace of mind knowing that all those things are covered.
Right. One more thing that is part of the financial plan, again, obviously investments, income. Now we're talking about risk management, talking about possible insurance tools. We want to make sure the income stream stays consistent without taking loss. These could be annuity tools, but also I want to ask you about estate planning. And estate planning isn't just if you have $50 million or $100 million. Right. Who is important in your mind to be doing estate planning?
Everybody, right? Everybody. I mean, there's so many tools out there when it comes to estate planning. If you went to talk to an estate planning attorney, I mean, they can talk to you forever about all the tools, whether it be power of attorneys, whether it be wills, whether it be trust, and there's probably 100 different types of trusts out there. I often have people come into the office and say, hey, my brother-in-law got this trust. I want to put one of these trusts in place. What do I need to do that? I'm like, well, what's the trust and what's the purpose of the trust, right? So when you talk about estate planning, you need to have the basic tools in place first, right? You got to have a will. You got to have a power of attorney. Why is it important to have a power of attorney? There's two types of power of attorney. There's a healthcare power of attorney. There's a financial power of attorney, right? So I have couples that'll come in 40, 50 years married, and they look at me when I talk about having a power of attorney as the first step in building your estate plan, right? And they said, well, I've been married 50 years. If something happens to my husband, I'll just go to the bank or I'll go to the investment company and I'll just get the information I need. I said, they will not give you any information, right? You need to have documentation to support that you're authorized to get that information. It's so important. Unfortunately, if one of you become incapacitated, it's too late to actually get that power of attorney. So these are some basic tools that you need to have in place. And then, if you need to go beyond that, whether it's some sort of a trust that needs to be done, the first step in determining whether you need a trust is knowing what you want to do with your stuff, right? Your stuff is everything you've accumulated over your lifetime. That's all your stuff. Who's getting all this stuff? Where's it going to go? When is it going to go, right? Until you can determine who's going to get all your stuff, you really can't do any additional planning when it comes to estate planning beyond your will and your power of attorney, right? Because then, once you figure this out, then you can figure out, do I really need a trust? And what type of trust should I have? These are just tools. Again, the tools in your toolbox to help you solve problems, right?
Well, we only got about 20 seconds left. Tell the audience about coming in for their own lab session.
So we're offering everybody that's watching us today a 60-minute lab session. The lab session is really designed to take a deep dive into your world, to get a financial analysis, determine whether you have money falling through the cracks. You really need to give us a call, on the number's on the screen here, to get that report, right? That report will be there to really help you to determine if there's money falling through the cracks, if there's a tax issue. Call the number, please.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back again with more Money in Motion next week.